Hello, Shana Tova. I'd like to talk briefly about a custom we have on the night of Rosh Hashanah of the New Year. Custom at the beginning of the meal to eat symbolic foods and say certain declarations over them. In this Maksur for Rosh Hashanah, which Rav Yaakov Warshevsky put out last year, Alev Saref Kulo, he talks a little bit here about the Simanim, and he says that this is a very powerful exercise to do at the beginning of the new year, because foods are very emotional things. Eating is an emotional thing and affects the emotions a lot. And when you take a food and you make a declaration, it has a strong effect on you. And he talks about three different stages that we see in the Simanim here. Simanim that are more used in the Sephardim, but now more Ashkenazim also do them. There's the stage of the salek, like selek, like beets, when we tell things to beat it, meaning we tell things to go away. May our enemies and those who hate us go away. And then there's a stage of karet, like karti, when we eat leeks. We eat leeks and we say, here it's on. Right, that they should be cut off, all those who seek our aid. And finally, there's a stage of tamarim, of dates, where we say, Yehi Ratzon, may it be your will, that sheyit tamu oivenu v'soneinu, that they just be finished, our enemies and those who hate us and all who seek our ill. So Rav Yaakov Warshevsky wants to say that this is like three stages in dealing with the things that pain us. One is, the first is salek, is to put some distance between it so you can see it a little bit from the outside. The second is the karet, to actually cut it off, which is to say, as he explains, that there's part of us that doesn't want to let go of the things that pain us, that we need them. It's sort of like a codependency. We don't know what life would be like without them. We say, when we eat, for example, leek, karti, and we say, sheyikratu, that all our enemies should be cut off. We're saying that it's okay to have a life without these enemies in our life. Really, it would be better. Really, it would be better not to have these enemies in our life. And in fact, we often are fueling them and sustaining them because we're afraid to do without them. We're afraid of them. We're afraid to do without them. And then finally, the final stage is yitamu, they're just finished. They're just no longer a part of our life. So I'd like to relate that, if I may, to our national political relationship, so to speak, over the past decades with the PA, with the Palestinian Authority. It was 30 years ago this month that the Palestinian Authority was created in the Oslo I Accords, and in September 1993, right around before Rosh Hashanah. And just recently, in the past week or so, before this Rosh Hashanah, our current Prime Minister announced that we have to strengthen the Palestinian Authority, we have to give them armored vehicles, different things, meaning we're still funding, we're still mezin, we're still fueling this Palestinian Authority. And that's really a shame, because the truth is they are our enemy. And it's good to recognize your enemy, and it's good to say, it'd be better off without this enemy in my life, not in our national life. Netanyahu, the current Prime Minister, became Prime Minister the first time in June of 1996. And then a few months later, also just before Rosh Hashanah, there was in September, October, I don't know exactly when it was, of 1996, there was the so-called tunnel riots, tunnel uprising. Why? Because Israel. Why? This is not the reason why. Because this reflects the paranoia of some of the Arabs. Israel opened up an archaeological tunnel next to the western wall next to the Temple Mount, and some of the Arabs in their paranoia thought that that was somehow threatening them and the Temple Mount, and started all types of riots in Jerusalem and elsewhere, in which took part also Palestinian police officers armed with the weapons they had gotten as part of the Oslo Accords, and they fired on Israeli soldiers. 17 Israeli soldiers, our precious brothers, were killed, and over 100 or 200 Arabs, of course. And that should have been the end of the Palestinian Authority. I mean, we didn't give them guns to shoot on Israeli soldiers. Of course, it was very foolish to give them guns at all, but certainly the intent was not so they should fire on Israeli soldiers. And that, of course, should have been the end of the Palestinian Authority. But it's not, and it hasn't been, and we haven't been able to stop this sustaining of our enemy, the Palestinian Authority, until today. So maybe it's something to think about, something to chew on, some mental food for thought before Yom Kippur. Rabbi Yaakov in his Maksor here, he also says that it's interesting. What is Yom Kippur? Actually, his Maksor for Yom Kippur, it's a separate one, 2 volumes. Yom Kippur, why do we have to do Vidoy, confession so much in Yom Kippur, 10 times? Because we're trying to part, to live fared with our old self, which has made mistakes. It's a time to really be born again. In a certain sense, that's part of Yom Kippur, is to start again. And in order to be born again, part of us has to die, meaning though that parts have been making mistakes and whatnot, that has to symbolically die, and we have to begin again. As we say in our tefillah every day, Rav Yaakov points out, we say Melech, Meimit, U'Michayeh, U'Matzmiach Yeshua, right? The king who brings to death, Meimit, who brings to death, U'Michayeh, and revives, U'Matzmiach Yeshua, and cause salvation to sprout. That's always the Seder, Rav Yaakov says. First, it's always Meimit, something has to die, and then Mechayeh, and something can be reborn. So I hope and I suggest that at this time and any time of the year, we should realize who our enemies are, stop sustaining them, realize our lives would be better without them, to take responsibility for this whole country, and not to let parts of it be ungoverned under the non-governance of the Palestinian Authority, which is a creature of our own creation, or a creature of our own sustaining. All their taxes come, they don't even tax their own citizens. All their money comes from money that Israel collects for them, taxes it collects for them and forwards to them. And if there's any doubt that they're enemy, I think it's clear. I mean, the fact that if anyone wants to argue that they're not their enemy and that they do something against terrorism, well, it's well known that the Palestinian Authority funds and pensions to the families of all types of terrorists. That's not a secret. So if that's not an enemy, I don't know what is. So let's hope for better. Let's hope that we can part with that part of us has been foolish. To minar speaks, it's okay to realize that to say we're not beseder. That's part of Yom Kippur, is be able to say we're not beseder, and it's okay to say we're not beseder. Stop rationalizing, stop denying, and then maybe we can Matzmiach Yeshua, we can go forward to have better things sprout. Shna Tova.